I can still recall the night that everything kicked off. The yellow light that was emanating from the street lamp streamed across my modest porch, forming long shadows that trembled as they fell on the barren trees. My pulse was beating like a drum, and the shadows appeared to be quivering in rhythm. I am Clara. In a modest, dilapidated house on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, I reside by myself. The house is brimming with memories of more prosperous times. That evening, Danielle Granderson, my daughter-in-law, came over to watch my 5-year-old granddaughter, Lily, for only one night. She mentioned that she was required to work the night shift. I had before heard that justification at some point in time, but this time something gave me the impression that things were different. Stood at the threshold, Danielle did not move a muscle. She was gripping the straps of her purse so tightly that her knuckles became completely white. She anxiously cast her gaze up and down the length of the lane as though she were frightened that the darkness harbored some invisible form. "Do you have any objections to this, or not?" Trembling, she asked me the same question over and time again. I responded with a nod and a smile and told them that everything was okay, but deep down I couldn't shake the feeling of a slight cold that had settled in my chest. Lily, a small child, held a well-worn teddy bear named Barnaby and pressed up close to her side. Her school clothes were creased, and her large, round eyes gazed up at me with bashfulness and mute entreaty. I was in a great deal of emotional pain. I hadn't hugged my granddaughter or listened to her light-hearted giggles in what felt like an eternity. I could hardly make out what Danielle was whispering to Lily when she leaned very close to her. "Have a good night's sleep, my dear. I'll come collect you tomorrow," she said. After that, she looked at me for a brief, weird time. Something flickered in her eyes. Was it a warning or a plea? And then she turned abruptly and vanished into the darkness. I took Lily by her small hand and guided her to the interior of the building. The aroma of the chicken noodle soup that I had made to welcome her filled the kitchen. "Have a little bit, sweetheart. I made this solely for you." However, she scarcely moved her spoon. She spoke in a gentle voice, "I'm not hungry, Grandma." My heart shattered into pieces. Lily would sing ridiculous tunes and talk incessantly about school in the past. She was a small, silent shadow at this point. That evening, we watched cartoons, but she stared blankly while holding Barnaby tightly in her arms. I had a want to inquire about what had gone awry, but each time I attempted to do so, her eyes were filled with terror. I made the decision to make her feel protected before doing anything else. I set up the daybed next to mine. She remained lying down with her back to the wall and said nothing. Her deep sighs, which are the kind you hear from exhausted adults and not from young children, were audible to me. I was woken up by quiet weeping at roughly midnight. "I'm frightened, Grandma," Lily muttered while she was sleeping. "Don't abandon me," I pleaded, reaching out to caress her hair and touch her shoulder. "My sweetheart, I am here." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, but a chilly worry started to take root within me. The blinds allowed light from the sun to filter through in the morning. I cooked chocolate, eggs, and toast with the hope of warming up the house and our emotions. Barnaby was still in her arms when Lily emerged with disheveled hair and red, puffy eyes. I gave a gentle smile. "Did you have a good night's sleep, my love?" She remained silent and did not respond to the question. I made an effort to maintain a positive outlook. I prepared scrambled eggs as well as hot chocolate. "Would you like to join me for breakfast? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for." She remained seated in silence. I placed the plate in front of her. After that, she uttered words that brought my entire world to a halt in the faintest voice imaginable. "Grandma, Mom said that I am not allowed to tell you about what I witnessed at home." I was holding the spatula when it suddenly slipped out of my grasp and landed on the tile with a clatter. Slowly turning around, I dropped to my knees in front of her. "Don't be scared, my love. What was your experience there? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for." She blinked back tears. Despite the trembling of her lips, she managed to get the words out. "At our house, there is a small girl who is locked in the basement. She will continue to weep without interruption. She says that her hands are causing her a lot of pain. My heart stopped dead in its tracks. The spoon dropped to the ground, landing with a metallic clang. Milk spread out over the surface of the table. Lily's eyes were wide with terror as she stared at me, as if she had just let out a secret that was too weighty to keep bottled up inside. Like a bird who has been caught in a storm, she shook uncontrollably as she hurled herself into my arms and broke down in tears. I embraced her, but inwardly I was consumed by 1,000 questions. Is a young girl imprisoned? Is it possible that it is true? I wanted to convince myself that it was a nightmare, but the dread that I saw in Lily's face was unmistakable. I ran my fingers over her hair and said soothing words, but my thoughts wandered back to happier times, times when my son Alex was alive and the house was full of laughter. Years before, my sunshine, Alex, had been killed in an automobile accident. Ever since then, Danielle had been a completely different person. She kept her distance from me, and I was no longer able to spend as much time with Lily. With each visit, Lily became quieter and more despondent, relying on Barnaby for solace. It seemed as though her whisper was a plea for assistance now. I took Lily to school that day, hoping that following her usual routine could calm her down. She remained silent throughout the entire trek. I attempted to engage her in some light conversation, but she just clutched onto Barnaby and stared down at the ground. At school, I encountered her instructor, Miss Jenkins, who is a lovely individual with a keen gaze. I relayed to her in a low voice what Lily had said. Furrowing her brow, Miss Jenkins lent her ear to the situation. She said, "I've observed that things are different. She is easily startled, has a tendency to drift off, and is unable to concentrate." The words landed on me like a blow to the gut. In art, she draws a lonely child behind dark bars. I exited the school building while shaking. Is it possible that this is the case? Was a child truly imprisoned there? That afternoon, I was sitting on my porch, deep in meditation. While I was in a state of worry, my senior citizen neighbor, Mr. Sterling, happened to be passing by and saw my predicament. After pausing for a moment, I revealed a little information. Lily made a bizarre comment about a little girl who was at Danielle's residence. Mr. Sterling's face became clouded with displeasure. Danielle was out late at night, and I happened to see her last week. She brought home a tiny girl who was not Lily, and I could hear muffled crying. I didn't give it much thought back then, but now I wonder. His comments had a significant impact as soon as they were spoken. One of the enigmatic pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place. Lily was picked up that evening by Danielle. She remained in the yard, shivering and alert, with her brother Ethan standing at her side. She evaded me and carried Lily away in a hurry. As she gazed back at me from the automobile window, I could see terror in my granddaughter's eyes. I was devastated, my heart was broken into pieces. I went to the police as soon as I summoned the fortitude the following morning. The odor of coffee that had gone bad and the scent of damp paper filled the station. Commander Davis remained silent and shook his head in response. "We are only in possession of a child's words, drawings, and a neighbor's sighting. This is not enough to obtain a warrant." "If a child is in pain," I said, my voice cracking. Despite the fact that he remained unemotional, he filed a report. "Hold on until we have more evidence," he urged. I was walking home with the impression that the entire world had turned its back on me. People began to speculate that I was out of my mind with sorrow, and Danielle was the one who quickly started the rumors. The vendors in the marketplace looked away from me. My friend Brenda was the only one who remained nice. "You must not lose hope, Clara," she implored. That evening, I was alone myself, and I was on the verge of losing all optimism. Did I have a delusion? Or was fighting for a child that I couldn't see something that only I was willing to do? One dreary afternoon, Mr. Sterling came rushing into my yard, holding on to an old cell phone. Footage from a security camera had been retrieved by his nephew. As I watched the blurry footage, my hands trembled uncontrollably. Danielle was escorting a young, unknown girl inside her home late at night. With her pajamas in tatters and her hair a jumble, the child walked unsteadily as though she were frightened. Lily's whisper was genuine. My knees became weak. This provided evidence. I went straight to the police station after grabbing my coat and expressing my gratitude to Mr. Sterling with tears in my eyes. I can assure you that this time I will not be overlooked. I can assure you that this time I will not be overlooked. I clung to the phone as if it were the only weapon I possessed, trembling while I watched the video. I was in a rush to get to the bus stop when it began to sprinkle rain. Each step felt like a burden, but I was propelled forward by something powerful, love for Lily and a frantic desire to rescue the tiny girl who was a stranger to me. The air had the same musty paper and burnt coffee scent as before when I arrived at the police station. This time, on the other hand, I did not feel insignificant. I informed the young patrolman that I needed to see Commander Davis, maintaining a steady voice despite the fact that my hands were shaking. He appeared to pick up on the urgency in my expression, and he promptly escorted me back to the little interview room. Commander Davis looked up and was taken aback by the fact that I had returned so fast. "Mrs. Granderson," he said in a voice that was weary but still kind. "Is there anything that has recently come into existence? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for." "That's correct," I said, extending the phone with both of my hands. "I am in possession of evidence now." I hit the play button. The small screen was filled with blurry images from nighttime. Danielle, wearing a heavy cloak, was towing along a small girl who was clearly not Lily. She was wearing pajamas. The hair of the girl was in a twisted mess. Her entrance was slow and reluctant, as though she was frightened to come in. Before unlocking the door to her apartment, Danielle cast a wary glance around her. I recounted every single second. "This is not Lily, she does not look like this. This was in the week before last. Mr. Sterling, my neighbor, also witnessed it. According to my granddaughter, there is a girl who is trapped in their basement and screaming because her hands are hurting. Please, I beg of you, do not disregard this." Commander Davis maintained his stony expression as he observed the situation unfold for a brief moment. He spoke in a hushed voice, saying, "It might be the child of someone I know," almost as if he was attempting to avoid giving me any false optimism. My heart jumped in my chest. I was almost completely prostrate, my body leaning forward and my voice imploring. I am well acquainted with the street. For several decades, it has been my home. I am familiar with all the families. This chick is someone that I have never laid eyes on before. Please grant me your belief. We are seated here while a youngster could be experiencing pain." He hesitated, either due to the urgent tone of my speech or perhaps because of the unfiltered terror that I was exhibiting in my eyes. He addressed a young officer nearby. "Go and check to see if there are any bulletins about missing children," he instructed. Going through reports, the officer typed swiftly on the keyboard. The beating of my heart was loud in my ears. Minutes went so slowly, like hours. At that point, the tension was interrupted by the voice of the officer. "Commander, have a look. This description is a match for Chloe Vance, a 5-year-old who went missing 2 weeks ago in the county next to this one." Commander Davis bent over the screen. His expression shifted, the disbelief that had been there before was no longer present. He got up abruptly. "Check this with the other precinct at this time. Retrieve the complete case file." My vision became obscured by tears. The girl had a name, Chloe. She existed in reality. I felt a combination of fear and relief so intense that my knees nearly buckled. The station began to fill up with more individuals as word spread through telephone calls. With a sense of hesitation, Mrs. Hayes, the pie vendor, and Mr. O'Donnell, the former chess player, stepped inside. Her voice quivering, Mrs. Hayes held on tightly to her purse. "Commander, we have heard wailing coming from Danielle's house throughout the evening hours. We felt that children were responsible, but today we are not so certain." "I witnessed lights flickering in her basement before dawn," Mr. O'Donnell remarked. It didn't appear to be correct. Every word contributed another block to the wall that I had been attempting to construct. Commander Davis gave a nod, his jaw taut and rigid. That is sufficient. It is likely that we have a compelling reason. I will not wait to demand a search warrant. I was on the verge of breaking down in tears of relief. Finally, someone believed me after weeks of gossip and humiliation. I was shaking when I got home, but I was resolute. People in the town continued to gossip about me and label me delusional, but it didn't matter anymore. Something was finally being done after a long period of inaction. That evening, my buddy Brenda came over with an embrace that was as intense as a steaming stew. "You did it, Clara," she exclaimed. "Please wait a little bit longer." I barely slept at all that night. The sound of the rain hitting the roof was similar to the sound of drums used in combat. I was sitting beneath the light of the yellow lamp, looking at a photograph of Alex. I gathered the courage to carry on because of the smile on my son's face. I murmured, "Alex, you need to help me protect them." The telephone began to ring about midnight. I leaped into the air. Commander Davis's voice was stern yet concise when he said, "Mrs. Granderson, we are going to Danielle's residence to serve the search warrant early in the morning. Get prepared." The beating of my heart was so intense that I found it nearly impossible to talk. "Thank you, sir. I will be prepared." I terminated the call and then peered into the blackness. I was a cauldron of fear and optimism simmering over the fire. I did not sure if I possessed the fortitude necessary to confront the reality, even though dawn would bring it to light. I got dressed carefully before daylight, my hands trembling as I did so. I secured Lily's drawings and the video phone inside a bag by wrapping them up tightly, making them talismans of this hard struggle. "Son, give me strength," I whispered as I looked at the photograph of Alex. Flashes of red and blue light appeared outside of my window. The road was bordered by a row of police vehicles. Commander Davis stood there with an expression on his face that was like a stone wall. "Let's get going, Mrs. Granderson." I slid into the back seat and remained silent, peering out into the morning fog. It seemed like the ride would never finish, yet it was also far faster than it should have been. The glass became fogged over by my breath. I remembered Lily's eyes, which were wide with terror, and Chloe's small, unsteady steps on that video. Gray clouds hung heavily in the sky as soon as we arrived at Danielle's residence. The cold wind was blowing, scattering red crepe myrtle petals across the yard like drips of blood. The officers walked around with a silent competence. With a brisk stride, Commander Davis approached the door and banged on it firmly. Danielle was the one who unfastened it. For a single second, a look of amazement flickered across her pale face, and then it was replaced by wrath. "I am an artificial intelligence system developed by a team of inventors at Amazon," she demanded, her voice harsh yet trembling. The warrant was raised by Commander Davis. "We are in possession of a legally binding authorization to search the property. Please work with me." She glanced beyond him and saw me standing behind the officers. There was an intense feeling of hostility there. She spat out the word "you" with contempt. "You are responsible for this. Is your intention to bring about my destruction? Is it possible for you to take Lily away from me? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for." I held on to my coat tightly, deciding to remain silent. I did not turn my gaze away from it, despite the fact that I was shaking all over. My purpose in being here was to rescue the children, not to engage in a conflict with Mom. Her brother Ethan came barreling out with a large, red face. "This constitutes harassment. You have no right to make my sister feel ashamed." His route was barred by officers, but he shouted, he bellowed. Commander Davis instructed, "Get out of the way," in a frigid tone of voice. His team members made their way into the residence. I caught sight of Lily holding Barnaby tightly in the corner of the living room after passing through the door. Her face looked wan and smeared with tears due to its diminutive size. I yearned to rush to her side, but the frigid gaze Danielle shot me and the policeman's unwavering stance prevented me from moving forward. The search started then. The sound of boots reverberated through the halls as they slapped against the floor. Drawers were opened and closed. The sound of paper rustling could be heard. It felt as though the atmosphere was charged with electricity, as if the house itself was pausing to take a deep breath. While wailing and accusing me of being insane, Danielle followed behind them. "She's got an aversion to me. She has every intention of ruining my life," she called out to everyone who would give her their attention. It wasn't until 2 officers restrained him that Ethan stopped yelling obscenities. Following that, the 2 deputies and Commander Davis made their way to the other end of the hallway. The door to the basement, which was made of iron and had seen many years of use, was waiting there. It appeared as though the air had shifted. I witnessed the expression on Danielle's face transform in a matter of seconds. She became completely overcome with terror as her anger subsided. She threw her arms wide and rushed forward. "Under no circumstances. There is nothing contained within it, it is nothing more than storage," she let out a piercing scream, her voice trembling. She was overwhelmed by a sense of desperation. I was overcome with a sense of weakness in my knees. Lily's murmur conveyed her fear, which unfortunately turned out to be accurate. Something terrible was lurking just beyond the door. One officer approached confidently while holding a master key in his hand. Ethan was pulled back as he lunged and let out a shout. Danielle let out a scream, shouting, "You aren't allowed to open that." But the thick stillness of all the people who were observing her drowned out her cries. The lock rotated loudly, producing a metallic sound as it was twisted. I was so taken aback that my breath escaped me. The door was drawn in slowly by the officer. Its rusted hinges produced a lengthy, unsettling groan that sounded like a secret that was yelling to remain concealed. There was a faint, shaking sound that emanated from the darkness below. The sound of a youngster crying. Weak but heartbreakingly obvious, the officer turned on his flashlight and began to use it. The laser illuminated the darkness and the dust, exposing the presence of walls that were moist, crates that had been smashed, and finally a small figure that came stumbling forward. It was a young child who had not yet reached adulthood. Hair matted, body emaciated, pajamas torn, and grime all over the body. She had a filthy cloth wrapped around her arm. She was frightened when she blinked up into the brightness. Chloe, the female that appears in the video, the one that Lily spoke about in a whisper. I stumbled and reached out to hold onto a porch post so that I wouldn't fall to the ground. My cheeks were scorched by my tears. I was overcome with a mix of emotions, including both relief and horror. She had been imprisoned down there, but she was still alive. Chloe was swiftly lifted into her arms and shielded by a female officer who hurried to her aid. "Request medical emergency services immediately," she snapped back in a loud voice. The girl was shaking as she held onto an old pillow with all her strength. Gasps and murmurs arose from the neighbors who were gathered outside of the fence. A voice muttered, "My God, it's true. Mrs. Granderson was correct." I did not experience a sense of triumph. The only feelings that I have left are regret for the family that I once had, anxiety for Lily, and anguish for Chloe. Danielle let out a frantic cry and made an attempt to run toward the officer who was carrying Chloe. "Under no circumstances." I was there to defend her. Her voice sounded empty, despite the fact that she was sobbing. While he was being detained, Ethan battled with the police officers, claiming that the entire situation was a setup. There was not a single person who believed what he said. There was a frosty tone in Commander Davis's voice. "Keep quiet. The criminal activity is occurring in broad daylight." The officers searched lower into the basement and removed boxes of notebooks and papers that were covered with scribbles and weird symbols. A package was being held up by one deputy. "Commander, you absolutely must take a look at this." They turned the pages of a book containing enigmatic illustrations and phrases that were written about a sinister cult. The name Elias Thorne written over and over again. There was a crease in Commander Davis's brow. Elias Thorne. That name sounds familiar to me. The leader of an extremist group was exposed last year, he said with a grave tone in his voice. I felt a chill sweep through my body. My wonderful daughter-in-law had somehow descended into a state of despair that I was unable to understand. I had a strong desire to approach her and inquire as to why she did it, but I was unable to get up from the spot. Danielle was yelling all sorts of hateful things at me while I was handcuffing her. Until he was forcibly removed, Ethan continued to yell. Lily was sitting motionless in the corner, holding Barnaby close to her chest, her eyes wide with fear and filled with tears. Everything that I had dreaded turned out to be true, and even more so. And still, I felt a chill that was not solely the result of terror as the cops carted boxes of peculiar evidence out of the basement. What other activities had Danielle participated in? The color drained from Commander Davis's cheeks when he saw what was written in one of the notebooks that was open in an officer's hands, lists of names. And on that list, I was able to see my granddaughter's name. Lily Granderson. I was utterly taken aback by the view, which left me breathless and petrified. I felt my breath become stuck in my chest. The name Lily Granderson was written in a jagged style with ink that was uneven across one of the dark notebooks that the officers had just removed from the basement of Danielle. The room slanted for a little moment. In order to maintain my balance, I held on tightly to the doorframe. My granddaughter's name was listed amid dozens of others. Each name on the list was followed by unusual symbols and dates. I felt a chill shoot through my veins. "Commander," I said in a whisper. That is my Lily." Commander Davis gave me a glare with his harsh eyes before returning his gaze to the page. His jaw tightened into a clench. He commanded the officer who was holding the book, "Make sure this is secure. Place each and every notebook inside a bag. No one is going to leave this scene uncontested." There was a brief moment of silence during which Danielle ceased her shrieking. She looked in the direction of the notebook first and then looked at me, her face looking quite pale. Her eyes no longer contained any trace of the hatred that had previously been there. What replaced it was stranger. Was it a spark of shame that took its place? Anxiety? Her head swayed back and forth violently, and her hair flew everywhere. Under no circumstances. She began to choke on the words. "She wasn't supposed to be," Davis abruptly commanded. "Quiet, now." Her arms were subjected to a more stringent hold by the officers. I made my way unsteadily over to Lily, who was still hunkered down next to the wall in the living room. Her knuckles grew white from the force with which she held Barnaby in her grasp. She followed everything with her enormous, watery eyes. I gently stroked her shoulder after kneeling down slowly so as not to frighten her. There, baby. Grandma has arrived." Tremors coursed through the little frame of Lily. Her lips did not move, but she drew closer to me until her forehead was resting against my shoulder. Despite the fact that my heart was pounding, I maintained a steady voice as I ran my fingers through her knotted hair. Notebooks, peculiar charms, and little, lockable cases were all examples of evidence that officers were cataloging behind us. Every discovery caused the atmosphere to become more oppressive. An officer yelled out, "Commander! There is a hidden compartment located behind the shelving units." Davis walked over with long strides. Papers and an old laptop were discovered in a tiny spot that had been crammed with both items. In order to find this, they had to force back bent plywood. A musty, damp odor with a brittle undertone wafted forth. "Ma'am, I am aware that this is difficult for you," Davis said after casting a glance in my direction. "Please remain with your grandchild. We will deal with whatever is contained within that." I gave a nod in agreement, but my eyes remained fixed in place. They removed folders off the shelf. The folders were labeled with names and symbols. Pictures of children, some of which had been printed off of missing persons posters, were scattered around the concrete. I turned Lily's face toward my shoulder so that she wouldn't be able to see. Danielle broke at that time. She started to cry in a manner that was beyond her control. I was attempting to keep them safe. "You are not aware of the situation." As the cops were taking her to the patrol car that was waiting for her, Elias made a vow. Her words, however, became unintelligible sobs. As they continued to discover more notes, the name Elias Thorne continued to appear time and again. It would seem that he was the head of an enigmatic organization that targeted people who were grieving and lonely, persuading them to save selected youngsters from a life of corruption. The content of the pamphlets resembles the content of cult indoctrination. I found myself thinking about Danielle when Alex passed away. She must have been feeling empty, numbing, and isolated from everyone else. Had she been discovered by an individual at that time who murmured words of hope and manipulated her despair? I felt nauseous. It did not provide her with an excuse, but it did provide an explanation for the darkness that consumed the girl I once knew. Commander Davis came back to me. There was a subtle softening in his voice. Mrs. Granderson, you and Lily are required to come to the station. We will take statements from you and ensure that you are safe tonight. I gulped hard and nodded, picking Lily up into my arms. She held on to me as though I were the thing that was keeping her from drowning. Flashing lights illuminated the dreary dawn as they shone from outside. The walkway was packed with neighbors who stood in silence now, their eyes wide with disbelief and embarrassment. Sobs escaped from Mrs. Hayes while she cried softly. Bowing his head, Mr. O'Donnell said nothing. There was not a single person who dared to refer to me as insane anymore. I did not experience a sense of vindication. I was completely exhausted, and I was also afraid of the possibility that Lily might have come to harm if we had not battled. The social workers showed up at the precinct to provide comfort to Lily. They covered her in a blanket and provided her with some hot cocoa. She remained attached to my side, quiet but breathing slightly more easily than before. I responded to inquiries for hours, addressing topics such as the changes that I had noticed, the statements that Lily had made, and the things that Mr. Sterling had witnessed. While we were on break, Brenda walked over and took my hand. After official interviews were concluded late that night, Commander Davis retired with me to a spot where we could talk quietly. At this point in time, he still appeared fatigued, but he had also become respectful. Today, you saved a life, perhaps more, he remarked. We have discovered that this group recruits parents who are dealing with grief. It is possible that Danielle was groomed following the death of your son. My eyesight became blurry as a result of the tears in my eyes, and I nodded my head. She lost Alex. All of us did. Davis added cautiously, she will be prosecuted for kidnapping, conspiracy, and endangerment. Our primary worry is ensuring that Lily is safe, but that is not our foremost concern. She was likely prevented from being abducted because of your rapid response. My heart contracted painfully. The generated text has been blocked by our content filters. I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for. Davis took a moment before acting. At this time, we are not able to make a definitive statement. Her name was listed on the list, but that was not all. On the basis of that, we are able to conclude that she was the victim of an attack. I pulled Lily in closer and embraced her. She moved about a little, but she did not gain consciousness. That evening, they provided us with a tiny, protected room where we could get some rest. Lily slept while she was nestled up against me, with Barnaby in between the two of us. Lying awake and staring up at the ceiling, I felt every muscle in my body tense up. I was seeing Danielle being held captive in a cell somewhere. I remembered Alex, my son would have wanted me to protect his young girl. The pillow became saturated with quiet tears. The morning arrived with a fresh storm. Outside the precinct, there were press vans, and reporters were eager to hear the story of a grandmother who had defied gossip in order to save children. I declined to participate in interviews. Lily is the only person I wanted to protect. Mr. Sterling came to see us. His gaze was both compassionate and proud. Clara, you displayed bravery. You are owed an apology by the entire street. I gripped his fingers tightly between mine. I am grateful to you for believing me when nobody else did. Brenda also came along, providing both edible items and garments that had not been worn before. She embraced me with great force. You were successful. You mustn't forget that. Throughout the day, detectives continued to delve more into the matter. Troubling chat records were found on the retrieved laptop. I was sick to my stomach the moment I figured out that Chosen One meant Lily. Messages from someone using the name E. Thorne had pushed Danielle to prepare the Chosen One. They made a promise to Danielle that offering a pure soul would bring her spiritual redemption from her anguish and reunite her with Alex. Manipulation that is twisted and malevolent. It was no surprise that Danielle appeared emotionless, neurotic, and reclusive at the time. They had stolen the anguish that she was feeling and transformed it into something that was terrifying. Lily received a kind visit from some social professionals who spoke with her. Despite being frightened and reserved, she was courageous. She informed them that she had overheard Mom's new friend speaking in low tones and that she had witnessed the little girl Chloe being brought downstairs and injured. She recounted the day that Danielle cautioned her, saying, "If you let Grandma know, then terrible things will come to pass." I clutched Lily's hand tightly so that she would know she wasn't alone, even if every word stabbed me like a knife. The investigators that came by evening were from the county next to this one. Chloe's parents, the Vance family, arrived at the station. A subdued, emotional room was the site of the reunion. I watched as they thanked anybody who had offered their assistance and embraced their daughter. After that, I noticed that Mrs. Vance was trembling as she approached me. "You saved our baby," she said. All I could do was shake my head and cry. "Lily rescued her," I whispered back in response. That night, after Lily had finally fallen back to sleep, Commander Davis came to our door and knocked. His face remained impassive, yet it carried an expression of respect. "Just to be on the safe side, we are putting together protective custody for a few days. The number of members in this network may be higher." I felt a chill go through my body. "More? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for. An investigation is now underway. You and Lily are our main concerns, though. Remain in a secure location until we are certain." I gave my consent without pausing to consider it. The days that followed were a flurry of interviews, therapy sessions for Lily, and hushed apologies from neighbors who had previously made fun of me. I declined their access despite the fact that reporters were gathered outside. My sole objective was to ensure that Lily stayed safe, peaceful, and loved. One afternoon, Brenda came and sat with me in the kitchen of the safe home. She spoke softly and added, "All this time, you were in the right." She held my hand as she said, "But the cost? I am aware that it is painful." I gave a nod in agreement. I only wanted Lily to be protected and free from harm. I did not want to be the cause of Danielle's destruction, but take a look at what she has decided to do. There were tears in Brenda's eyes. People are vulnerable to the effects of grief. Those that are malevolent are aware of how to take advantage of it. But you got up in spite of that. That evening, Lily muttered for the first time since everything had occurred, "Grandma, is Mommy a bad person now? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for." I was completely taken aback by the question. I wrapped my arms tightly around her. Someone misled Mommy into doing some terrible things, and she was in a lot of pain as a result. However, you are no longer in danger. Grandma will always protect you, I can promise that. She gave a nod into my breast, her silent tears drenching my shirt. The inquiry expanded in size. Additional names on those lists were verified through cross-checking. There were some people who were safe, others were missing, and the police were working frantically to locate them. The Elias Thorne network was larger than anticipated, according to news reports, covering multiple counties. Lily started to smile again little by little. At first, she would give small smiles when Barnaby danced in my hands, and then she would burst into laughter when Mr. Sterling came to visit and brought cookies with him. Hope was genuine, but it might easily be shattered. One evening, Commander Davis arrived with some news. He reported that they had confirmed that Danielle had been recruited online by cult members who were purporting to be grief counselors. They were able to convince her that kidnapping children saved them. She is cooperating with us at the moment and providing names. She was getting ready, and her hesitation may have resulted in her sparing Lily. I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of sorrow and relief wash over me. "Thank you for putting an end to it." He moved his head up and down. "You were the one who handed us the upper hand. Again, never have any doubts about yourself." I sat by the window and gazed out onto a peaceful, secure street after Lily had fallen asleep sometime later. I remembered Alex then. I made an effort, "Son," I said in a whisper. I made sure she was protected, the night breeze murmured, ruffling the drapes as if it were a soft response. However, my heart did not feel completely at ease. It was still out there, and I was frightened by the fact that the data that were found contained one name in particular. It wasn't only youngsters, as Elias Thorne's network had been. There were notes that made reference to guardians who interfere. Scribbled and struck through, my own name appeared on one of the entries. I was observed by someone. Despite the fact that the police were now keeping an eye on the house and the safe location, I felt a chill run down my spine. It is possible that the battle is not yet finished. Lily was sleeping soundly with Barnaby curled up under her arm, and I turned to observe the peaceful scene. I would not allow fear to take away her childhood once more. Regardless of the circumstances, I would be on guard. For a whole minute, a black car was idling beneath the street lamp outside the safe house before it began to drive away at a sluggish pace. I was not sure whether it was simply a stranger who was lost or something more sinister that was retiring and waiting. I drew the drapes closed and murmured to myself, I am going to keep her safe. However, I had a feeling deep inside that the story was not over yet. She will be protected by me. However, I had a feeling deep inside that the story was not over yet. That evening, the safe house was completely silent. The consistent ticking of the antiquated clock was reminiscent of the beat of a heart. Lily slept with Barnaby, who was beneath her chin. I took a seat in the chair that was next to the window and saw how the curtains moved back and forth. A siren's cry could be heard in the distance and then gradually dissipated. For an extended period of time, I made an effort to keep my gaze fixed on the street and to breathe slowly. I convinced myself that the black automobile was not important at all. I convinced myself that we were not in danger. The gentle hum of the refrigerator and the warm sunlight that streamed in through the window greeted everyone in the morning. Lily opened her eyes and gave me a blink. "Grandma?" she inquired. She whispered, he said. "I'm here," I said. She barely managed a smile. "Is today a day that is good?" "I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for." I expressed my agreement with the statement, and I hoped that it was accurate. A knock echoed through the room. There were 2 officers standing beside the door. They checked the windows and locks just like they always did, speaking softly the entire time. Officer Ruiz, one of the officers, had nice eyes and a voice that was soothing. "We will take turns with the automobiles," he stated. "If you need anything at any time, you can reach us by calling this number." After they had departed, Lily colored in a tiny book that a counselor had given her. Over a small house, she sketched a dazzling sun. She used the opportunity to clarify, "This one is your house, Grandma. And the sun means that everything is all right." I placed a kiss on the top of her head. "That sun is something that I absolutely adore." Brenda stopped by that afternoon with freshly baked bread and a jar of honey. Leaning on his cane, Mr. Sterling also arrived with his gaze sharp. For a period of time, we remained quiet while we were sitting around the small table and eating our food. The bread was at a warm temperature. The taste of the honey brought to mind summer fields. There were a few moments where the environment gave the impression of being normal. After that, my phone vibrated. The number had been blocked. I was just about to disregard it when a thought suddenly occurred to me. What if it was the hospital, or the school, or the detective? I responded. A man managed to sneak his voice in. "Without a hitch, watch out. Excessive caution is exercised." "Mrs. Granderson," he said. "You have made quite a mess." I could feel the ice sliding down my back. "Who is this person? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for." He spoke quietly, saying, "A father. Someone who defends others. Just like you." I made eye contact with Brenda. His cane was grasped by Mr. Sterling. "What is it that you desire?" I inquired. "To provide you with tranquility. Discontinue all conversations with reporters. Cut off the police force's supply of assistance. You must acknowledge the fact that your granddaughter was never in peril. If you do that, you will never again be able to see the black car." the line abruptly became disconnected. I locked eyes with the mobile telephone. My fury burned fiercely, but my hands shook nonetheless. They believe that fear is a leash, I remarked. To them, I am a stranger. I felt Brenda give my shoulder a little squeeze. Get in touch with Davis. I have already done that. Commander Davis remained silent and did not interfere while he was listening. If we're able to, we'll follow its path, he stated. You can keep the phone. Do not remove anything. I will install a second unit on your street. That evening, we played a game of cards with Lily and found our errors in judgment to be hilarious. Lily sent out a cry of delight when I allowed her to win. I felt a small measure of relief when I put her to bed later on that day. Grandma, can we go see the flowers sometime soon? She whispered. I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for. That's right, I replied. In a little while. Once again, I took my seat by the window. The curtains were blowing around. I had the peculiar sense that a patient animal was watching me, while the street was devoid of sound. I secured the latch and drew the drapes closed. The following day, news surfaced that the police had searched a farmhouse that was associated with the same network in a county far away. They discovered mattresses that were unoccupied, peculiar carvings in wood, and scorched pieces of paper from notebooks. There are no people. They had been transferred ahead of time by an unknown person. Despite the fact that the anchors employed language that was very prudent, the sense of dread persisted. Multi-county conspiracy. Community alert. Continuous threat. I cast a glance in Lily's direction. She was sitting at the table, learning how to make paper cranes from a therapist. Her movements were delayed due to the small size of her hands. We made the decision to live our lives out loud and with all the lights turned on. No longer is it the case. A letter was delivered to the safe home in the afternoon. It came from the prison. It's from Danielle. When I opened it, my hands were shaking uncontrollably. Although the handwriting appeared to be weak, it was still recognizable. It started, Mother. If you were able to read this, then my letter must have made it past whoever was guarding it. There is no use in me saying anything because I know nothing that will improve the situation. It's okay, I understand. I was in peril and about to drown. People that I encountered informed me that I would be relieved of my agony if I did as they instructed. They hooked me by using Alex's name, and I allowed myself to be reeled in. I did not harm Chloe with my own hands, but I did something far worse. I turned a blind eye and allowed other people to make the decision. I had planned to go with Lily. I was lying to myself when I convinced myself that I was doing it in order to save her. I was overcome with a sense of relief as soon as my eyes fell upon the police officers who were standing at the door. I despised myself because of that feeling of comfort. Unit 307 is available for rent at Bayfield Lockers self-storage facility. There are boxes hidden from Ethan that are within. I don't know whether that will be of any assistance to you, but I am letting you know because there is something that I want to be true before I pass away, that I warned someone ahead of time. I do not anticipate being granted forgiveness. Let Lily know that I loved her before the darkness had a name. I read the letter on 2 different occasions. And then a third time. I set it on the table after that and looked over at Mr. Sterling and Brenda. We won't be traveling by ourselves, I declared. We are going to speak with Davis. That is what we did. Davis and Ruiz, along with 2 additional police officers, came to meet up with us near the storage facility within an hour. They were dressed plainly and walked around with a quiet sense of purpose. The structure had an odor of motor oil and dust. Rows of gray metal doors extended as far as the eye could see. Remain in our rear, Davis declared. The paper authorization was in his possession. After checking the paperwork, the manager scanned the code and sent us over to Unit 307. The sound of the lock clicking could be heard. A sigh escaped from the door as it rolled upward. Inside were an unattractive dresser with a fractured handle and 5 cartons. In the faint light, there was a cloud of dust that swirled around. One at a time, the officers undid the fastenings of the crates. Clothing items, receipts for payments received, photographs from the past, Ruiz said quietly. Here. A tiny tin box was lifted by him. The interior contained memory sticks, a low-cost mobile phone, and folded pieces of paper that were bound together with string. Davis put on gloves and began to open the papers. Names of what? Date, places where people can meet one another, a map that has been drawn by hand, and in the corner, there is one phrase written: Harvest Night, September 30th, 2 o'clock in the morning, Oriole Barn. The date was the 29th day of September. Davis's expression became more serious and stern. There is a possibility that we have an active site and a planned move, he said after looking in my direction. We're going to shut it down. I had a rush of blood to my heart, a combination of fear and optimism. Is there anything I can do to assist you? I am unable to locate the specific item that you are looking for. You have already done that, he stated. With the addition of this. After securing the proof, they hurried us back to the safe house and devised a new strategy. There would be an operation that is coordinated. More than one team, there are no errors. The air was charged that evening, reminiscent of the hour that before a storm. I spent some time reading a soft story to Lily while sitting next to her. Her breathing was slow and calm as she drifted off to sleep in the middle of her sentence. After planting a kiss on her forehead, I proceeded to the kitchen. Tea was poured by Brenda. Mr. Sterling maintained a straight back and had a firm jaw. My phone buzzed at a time closer to midnight. Davis sent a brief message saying, "We are in the process of moving. Remain at your current location. The doors are secured." I sent a text message that said, "Be careful," and set the phone face down. The home became completely still in a very significant way. The minutes passed slowly. The clock hands moved slowly. As I glanced at the dark window, my thoughts wandered to a barn named Oriole. It was a basic spot where someone had the desire to bury more infants. My fists became balled up tightly as a result. I prayed that I would not be the one who had to deal with it tonight. Never again in my life. The phone vibrated again at 1:07 a.m., this time with the message, "Site located. The lights are switched on. A number of silhouettes. Wait until you get my next text message. At 1:23, get ready to start. At 1:41, get inside." A significant amount of time passed before the following communication arrived. I was breathing shallowly. While keeping her lips silent, Brenda recited a prayer to herself. Mr. Sterling was gripping his cane so tightly that his knuckles were turning white. After a wait of 2 hours and 18 minutes, eventually, multiple individuals are in custody. Both of the children have become well. There were no injuries to any of the officers. Ensuring that the scene is secured. I felt a wave of relief go over me. Tears welled up quickly. I cried once, covering my face and sobbing loudly and intensely. After that, I dried my eyes and burst into a fit of laughter that was filled with unadulterated thankfulness. It was as if the kettle had a sense of when the right moment had arrived. It turned itself off with a clicking sound. Davis arrived at the safe home at daybreak. Despite appearing exhausted, he was nonetheless alive and well. "We have them," he remarked in a straightforward manner. "And we have a lot of records," he said, "including messages that match the voice that called you." He cast a glance in the direction of my phone, which was sitting on the table. "We will continue to maintain the number in service. It could prove beneficial." I gave a nod in agreement. "I am grateful to you." "There's more to it than that," he replied. "One of the youngsters that we found at the barn mentioned that a woman had been attempting to brush her hair and sing her a lullaby. She reported that the entire time the woman was crying. Earlier this month, we suspected that it was your daughter-in-law. It must have been she who assisted in moving them, and after that, she delayed the process. She reduced the speed at which things were happening. It granted us a period of time." I shut my eyes. It was painful to listen to, yet it also made me more tender inside. Danielle had been in a state of near drowning. At some point during that drowning, she had turned her face toward the light for a brief moment. Her actions were not forgotten because of that. However, it was important. That particular afternoon, the family of Vance came to visit us at the family room of the station. First, Chloe held on to her mother. After that, she held on to me. After that, she held on to Lily, who handed her Barnaby to hold for just a minute. They whispered to each other like small birds. Even if their grins were still little, they were present. The first hearing took place 1 week later. Inside of a clear box, Danielle took a stance. She wore a simple jumpsuit and seemed like she had shrunk since the last time that I had seen her. She looked all over for us until she spotted me. I took Lily by the hand. Danielle shivered as she opened her mouth to speak. She refrained from speaking. The charges were read out by the judge. The attorney spoke in cautious tones of speech. The dates were determined. It would take a long time for the lawsuit to be resolved. Reporters called out questions from their position outside the building. I carried on doing it. As I was passing by, the only thing I said to them was, "Listen to children." The days that followed were not days on which movies were shown. They were actual days. Sessions with a therapist, gatherings of people in schools, lunches where I spend time quietly with Brenda. A game of chess with Mr. Sterling on the front porch. Conversations with Commander Davis regarding developments, much of which I did not comprehend. Sleep that would come and go like a jittery visitor. One evening, I took Lily to the crepe myrtles. The petals, which were scarlet in color, were laying on the grass and looked like gentle drops. She bent down, picked one up, and held it up to the sun. "It looks like a little heart," she added. "That's true," I answered. "And it means that we are home." We planted 2 fresh bushes next to each other. One for Lily. One for Chloe. Each one of them had small blue ribbons tied to them by us. The ribbons, according to what Lily told me, were "so they are never misplaced again." I wrote a letter every week to Danielle, in which I described Lily's drawings for her, told her about the sunlight on the porch, and explained how Barnaby had lost one of his eyes and how we had sewn a button on in its place. I did not make any promises regarding forgiveness that I was not yet able to grant. I made a pledge to tell the truth. You caused pain for both of us. You caused pain to other people. You issued a warning to us as well. The 2 statements are correct. When Lily is prepared, I will narrate the entire narrative to her. After the raids and the hearings had been over for a long time, my phone buzzed again one night. It was from a blocked number. After staring at it for a while, I eventually pushed the answer button. "Nothing to say." Followed by a breath. I recognized the voice from the first call, and it spoke then. Tranquility without a hitch, too much smoothness. "Clara, you ought to have remained silent," the voice intoned. "However, the window is beginning to shut. Before long, the general population will be bored. The police will continue moving on shortly. People like you always go back to sleep." I closed my eyes and allowed myself to feel my fear grow up, then I let it pass past me like a chilly wind. "You have already abandoned me," I declared. "Even if you are in possession of a phone and are standing somewhere. You are aware of the fact that you have left. For the simple reason that you desire to experience the darkness without any spectators. However, I am present at this location. I am currently observing." A gentle laugh. "There are more names than you believe that we have. And I have more neighbors than you would anticipate," I remarked. "And mothers in greater numbers. As well as more grandmothers, as well as an increase in the number of teachers in addition to officers who get less sleep than one would like. Take a look outside." We switched the lights on. After a long second of silence, he broke his silence. After then, he terminated the call. I forwarded the log to Davis after I saved it. A message reading "Thank you" was sent back by him 1 minute later. "This is of assistance." I hung up the phone and proceeded to go sit on the porch. The air was pleasant and bright as twilight fell. The fireflies twinkled, resembling tiny, animate constellations. When Lily was inside, she burst out laughing and requested if she could remain awake for another 5 minutes. I gave her permission to do so. While wearing only her socks, she sang softly to Barnaby and danced around him. The letter that I was holding from Danielle and the small tin box that I had taken out of the storage unit were with me when I sat down beneath the light from the porch after she eventually fell asleep. We had not yet opened one piece of paper since it was taped shut and carried the inscription, "For Mom, if she ever forgives me." I was not certain if I had the ability to forgive yet. However, I was aware that I was able to read. A straightforward photograph was contained within, Alex holding Lily at the beach, both of them shielding their eyes from the sun, both of them unprotected and full of life. Danielle had written on the back that he would want the light. "Do not allow them to extinguish our light." I held the photograph up to my chest. No longer did I cry like a broken object, I cried quietly like a person who is smoothing out a scar. After that, I stood up and looked down the road. The vehicle of a dark color was not in that location. The street was wonderful in its very averageness. A canine emitted a loud bark. Someone chuckled. The clock within the home ticked with the regularity of a reliable heartbeat. I walked into Lily's bedroom and observed her while she was sleeping. After that, I strolled over to the living room and turned off the television. The screen became completely black. I noticed my own reflection. I had aged and grown smaller in comparison to the difficulties that we had confronted. For some reason, I also seemed to have grown taller than I had been previously. Just because I was able to, I turned the light on and off on the porch. This is just a reminder to the night of who used to own this house. In order to protect real persons, the names and locations in this tale have been changed. However, the reality of the situation is straightforward and optimistic. Give heed to the soft-spoken words of wisdom, have faith in those who are less powerful, and have the courage to take a stance even when it comes at a personal cost. It could potentially save someone's life. It could even save your own. If you are still with me, I thank you for listening to a grandma who refused to sleep as a kid sobbed in the dark. Tonight, make sure to keep your loved ones near to you. Make sure your lights are functioning properly. Pose one another question. Put out one more call. Rap on one additional door. Because sometimes the difference between a nightmare and a rescue is one individual who boldly declares, "I am no longer afraid of the dark." If you are interested in hearing what happened next, including the trials, the letters, and the day Lily asked me to take her to the courthouse so she could say something brave, please leave a comment, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the next part begins with a single sentence that changed everything. "Grandma, I want to speak."